How's it going, everyone? So today I'm going to be showcasing you guys our CS437 final project, which is Intrance with an I, which is essentially a smart gate that leverages IoT to provide a secure gateway system for users around the world. So as you can see, the module is pretty straightforward. We have an ESP8266 over here. It's a NodeMCU module, so it comes with a CPU and all that. We use 2x16 or 16x2 LCD for the output. And we have an RFID module, RC522, for reading the RFID input. So you can start off the system by turning it on over here. And as you can see, as soon as it turns on, it's going to try to connect to Wi-Fi. Okay, now it's ready to scan. I've put like a sample of like RFID cards over here. So these cards over here are valid cards, and we have an invalid card right here. I marked it as well. So let's just put it here for now. So to showcase how it works, let's use a valid card first. So this is an RFID tag. Let's try to scan it. It's gonna say door unlocking and hi Edward. It's gonna open the door at the same time. So yeah, this tag belongs to a user named Edward. Let's try with this RFID card. It's gonna say door unlocking and it's gonna open it for Ashraf. So this card belongs to Ashraf. So if we're using the invalid card right here, and we try to scan it, then it's going to say access denied because this card doesn't exist in the user register on the database. So let's see how it works, like in terms of how it can authenticate the user, if it's a valid user or not. So I'm going to use the this tag, which is a valid tag. So let's see if we can see the log when we scan this. So all right, so that was the latest entry right here, the 7A-E7FD3F. So this is the UID of this specific tag, and how we keep track of the specific users. We essentially just make a database on MongoDB that keeps track of the name and the UID. So as you can see over here, we have a UID 7A-E7FD and 3F that belongs to Edward, and another one that belongs to Ashraf. So what this means is I can easily manipulate the data as well. So I can say edit the name that this UID belongs to. For example, let's call it Sam. We can just update it. So right now we're only using just the MongoDB like web editor, but we can easily like expand on this idea by creating a full-on website that can enable users to do CRUD operations, or we can even make a mobile app for that. But this is for demonstration purposes. As you can see, we've updated the name to Sam. So if we try to use the same tag again, now it's gonna greet the user with the appropriate name, which is Sam, and the door opens as expected. And also, if we want to revoke the access, let's say we want to revoke Sam's access to the door, we can just delete the entrance. And then we can try it again. And as you can see, now the card is invalid, so the access is denied. And yeah, this tag cannot be used to access the door any longer. So the same idea goes for this invalid card here. So if we were to put in the UID and put in the name, like on the database, then it's going to give access to the specific card. Another idea that we added on for this specific device is to cover the edge case of intermittent internet connection. So right now, it's being connected to this mobile hotspot running on my Android device. So let's see if I turn it off real quick. And so as you can see, the Wi-Fi is off right now. And let's try to use this still valid card that belongs to Ashraf. So if I want to scan it, it's going to say Wi-Fi disconnected, and it's going to say Wi-Fi trying to connect again. So it's not going to open the door. It's not going to say that it's rejected. It's just going to say that it's disconnected, and it tries to reconnect again, and it blinks, and then it's going to say access denied just to be safe. And then now it's ready to scan again, and then it's going to open the door once the connection is reestablished. So that's the idea for Intrance with an I, and we're going to delve deeper into the code after this segment. So now we're going to quickly run down the code that makes our Intrance with an I system works on the back end. So this is the core logic behind our ExpressJS request. So before we start there, as you can see over here, it's being hosted on Heroku app, and then this is the common form of our request. So when the entrance system detects an RFID, then it's going to make this specific request with that UID that's associated with that specific card. And this is how it's going to be handled over here. So as you guys can see, it's just going to try to see if it contains the UID as part of the request. And if it's not, it's going to deal with it accordingly. If it does, then it will just try to like open up the database and try to find the UID if it exists. And this is the database that it's going to try to look for. As you guys can see, we have different objects. For example, here we have a name Sam and UID here, name Edward and UID over here. And yeah, if it exists, then it will return the authorized message. Otherwise, if it doesn't exist, then it will just return the unauthorized status code and it will return invalid user. So how this translates to the request itself is, say if I have like a valid request here that is gonna say successfully authenticated, and it's gonna give back to Sam like the name over here. This is the part that's gonna be printed on our 16:2 LCD display. And let's say if we pass in an invalid card, for example 3D now, then it's gonna show unauthorized UID credential, and it's gonna give code 401 unauthorized. And if we try to access any other endpoint, then it will just give out bad request because it doesn't exist. And that's part of the ExpressJS. And now we're gonna see how the ESP8266 device itself consumes the data. So as you can see over here, when we set it up, it's gonna run the initializer, which is essentially set up all the inputs and outputs modules, and we're gonna print out scan ready. And then after that, we're gonna go into loop. It'll try to get the UID of the card if it scans anything, and then it's gonna run through this is valid subfunction over there. So we can track it down over here. So the isValid UID essentially will try to establish an HTTP connection. As you can see, the URI over here is the exact same. It will just get the UID and it will pass it from what we got from the reader, and then it will just try to make a GET request, and then it'll try to evaluate the response code. So if the response code returns 200, then that means the user is authenticated, and then it will just return true because it's validated. Otherwise, it will just return false. And how this is handled by our loop sequence over here, as you can see, if it's a valid response, it will just run the authorized sequence. Otherwise, it will just run the rejected sequence. And authorized sequence, you can modify it to be whatever you want. In this case, what we do is we just print out authenticated, we print out the name, and then we're gonna run the door open and the door close after waiting for 5 seconds. And for the rejected, we don't do anything except printing it on our LCD, which just says access denied. And yeah, that's about it. So that's what makes Intrance with an I run on the back end. And I hope you guys enjoy our project just as much as we did making it. Thank you and have a great break, everyone.